Without ever asking, the beautiful widow received bread and milk. One day she saw who delivered it. Sarah Johnson woke up startled when she heard the muffled sound of something being left at her door. A widow for 3 years, she was raising 4 young daughters alone on a forgotten piece of land in the Arizona desert. Her pride was all she had left, and the thought of accepting charity from anyone filled her with a mix of anger and shame that burned inside. When she opened the door that August morning, she found for the 10th time a wicker basket full of fresh bread and 3 bottles of milk. The still warm smell of the bread filled her senses, and she clenched her fists tightly. She hadn't asked anyone for anything. She didn't need anyone's pity. "Mom, is there food again?" The sleepy voice of Emily, her 12-year-old eldest daughter, came from inside the house. Sarah grabbed the basket with a jerky motion and went in, slamming the door harder than she intended. The girls were already awake. Besides Emily, there was 9-year-old Abigail, 6-year-old Olivia, and little Lily, just 4 years old. They all looked at the basket with hungry eyes, but Sarah felt her stomach churn with humiliation. "Who brought it, Mom?" Emily asked, coming closer. "I don't know, and I don't care." Sarah placed the basket on the worn wooden table. "But I will find out, and I will return it all." The girls exchanged silent glances. They knew their mother's temperament well. Sarah was a woman of grit, with her long red hair always tied in a tight bun, hands calloused from hard work, and a gaze that mixed determination and pain. Since Michael had passed, she had promised herself she would never be a burden to anyone. "But, Mum, we need to eat," Abigail said softly. "I know perfectly well what you need," Sarah replied more harshly than she wanted. She took a deep breath, trying to control her frustration. "I'm sorry. Of course you'll eat. But I will find out who is doing this." While the girls ate the bread with the butter that was left in the jar, Sarah went out to the yard. The sun was already rising high in the cloudless blue sky. The house they lived in was simple, with mud brick walls and an old tiled roof that leaked during heavy rain. All around, the dry land stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted only with a few mesquite trees and saguaro cacti. Sarah looked around, searching for any trace, footprint or sign of who had been there. But the hard ground revealed nothing. Whoever it was knew how to move without leaving clues. "This can't go on," she murmured to herself. The situation had started 3 weeks earlier. The first time, Sarah thought someone had mistaken the house. She left the basket outside for hours, waiting for someone to come and get it. No one showed up. The next day, the basket was empty, but another one appeared the following morning. And so it continued. Sarah worked as a seamstress, doing mending and alterations for families in the area. The money was little, but it was always enough to buy the basics, or almost always. In recent months, with the drought hitting the region even harder, payments had become scarce. People had little to spend on clothes when they could barely put food on the table. "Mum, Mrs. Reynolds sent word that she needs her skirt by tomorrow." Emily appeared at the door, wiping crumbs from her lips. "It's almost ready. I'll finish it this afternoon." Sarah went back inside and sat at her old sewing machine, the one that had been a wedding gift from Michael. Her hands began working on the floral fabric, while her mind kept turning over the mystery of the baskets. Who could it be? Why? And why her? That night, after putting all the girls to sleep together in the only bedroom they had, Sarah decided to stay awake. She dragged a chair to the front window and sat down with a blanket over her shoulders. I was going to find out who was behind this. The hours passed slowly. The silence of the desert at night was broken only by the crickets and the wind whistling through the cracks in the house. Sarah fought against sleep, blinking hard each time she felt her eyelids grow heavy. But it was useless. Around 3 in the morning, exhaustion won, and she fell asleep in the chair. When she woke up with the morning light coming through the window, the basket was already there. "No!" Sarah jumped up, running to the door. She opened it forcefully and looked all around. Nothing. No one. Just the basket with still warm bread and fresh milk. The frustration turned into anger. She grabbed the basket and threw it hard on the ground. The bottles rolled, but fortunately didn't break. "Mum!" Emily had woken up from the noise. "This is humiliating," Sarah shouted. "Someone is watching me. waiting for me to fall asleep to leave this here as if I were a beggar. Mom, please. Emily approached slowly. The girls will wake up. Sarah took several deep breaths, trying to calm down. She picked up the basket from the floor, feeling the tears burning in her eyes but refusing to let them fall. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to show weakness. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. In the following days, Sarah tried other strategies. She tied a thin string to the door, thinking that if someone touched it, she would feel the pull. But the next morning the string was intact and the basket had been left beside the door, not in front. She tried spreading ashes on the ground to capture footprints. She woke up and found only confusing marks that could have been from anyone. The neighborhood started to comment. Sarah, I heard you have a secret admirer. Mrs. Thompson, a plump lady who lived 3 houses down, said with a mischievous smile while handing over a dress to be mended. It's no admirer, and I don't know who it is, Sarah replied curtly. Oh, but everyone is talking. They say it's very romantic. A man who leaves food for the widow and the little orphans. Sarah felt her blood boil. My daughters are not orphans. They have a mother. Of course, I didn't mean to offend. Mrs. Thompson raised her hands. But you have to admit it's strange. Someone with so much interest. It's not interest. It's pity, and I don't need anyone's pity. After Mrs. Thompson left, Sarah punched the work table in frustration. The comments were spreading. Soon everyone would be laughing at her behind her back, thinking she was a poor thing who needed handouts. Mom, is everything okay? Abigail asked from the door, hugging her old cloth doll. Yes, my love, come here. Sarah opened her arms and the girl ran into her lap. Are you upset about the food that comes? I am, but you don't need to worry about that. I like the bread. It's tasty, Abigail said innocently. Better than the ones from Mr. Wilson's general store. Sarah sighed. It was true. The bread was of excellent quality, clearly made by someone who knew what they were doing, and the milk was always fresh, as if it had been milked just hours ago. That meant the benefactor had access to better products than she could buy. One more thing that bothered her. Who had such resources, and why spend them on her? One afternoon, Emily came back from the well where she went to fetch water and said, Mom, I think I saw who leaves the baskets. Sarah immediately dropped what she was doing. What? Who? I don't know his name. But he was coming toward our house this morning, really early, before sunrise. I came by the back trail because I wanted to see the sunrise from the hill. I saw an old man walking near our house. What did he look like? Old, with a big white beard, simple clothes, he walked slowly as if he were in pain. Sarah felt her heart race. An elderly gentleman. Who could it be? She tried to think of all the old men in the area she knew. Mr. Peter from the general store? No, he didn't have a beard. Mr. Anthony, who raised goats? That didn't match either. Are you sure he was coming this way? I'm not sure of anything, Mom. I only saw him from a distance, but he was heading in this direction. Sarah spent the rest of the day restless, an elderly gentleman. The older people in the area were usually the poorest. How could someone like that afford to leave quality food every morning? That night, after the simple dinner of beans with cornmeal, the pastor of the community church, Robert, came for a visit. He was a middle-aged man, thin, with round glasses and an always gentle smile. Sarah, I came to see how you all are doing, he said as he entered, greeting the girls playing on the floor. We're fine, Pastor Robert. Would you like some coffee? I'd love some, thank you. While Sarah prepared the coffee on the wood stove, the pastor chatted with the girls. Lily, the youngest, showed him a drawing she had made in the dirt of the backyard. Olivia told him about a butterfly she had seen. Emily and Abigail listened quietly, always more reserved. When Sarah served the coffee in old aluminum mugs, the pastor took a sip and said, Sarah, I've been hearing talk in the community. About the baskets, Sarah finished, without emotion. Yes, and I came to say that, whoever is doing this, they certainly have good intentions. Sometimes God works in mysterious ways to bless us. Pastor, with all due respect, But I didn't ask for any blessing. I didn't ask anyone for help. And I don't like being treated like charity. I understand your pride, Sarah, but pride can keep us from receiving the good that— It's not pride, she interrupted, raising her voice. It's dignity. I work hard every day. I do everything I can to give my daughters the best. I'm not a beggar. The pastor sighed. No one is saying you are, but accepting help when we need it isn't shameful, Sarah. It's wisdom. I don't need help. I need whoever is doing this to stop and leave me alone. What if it's someone who owes you, or Michael? Have you thought about that? Sarah fell silent. She hadn't thought of that. Michael had always been a good man, helping those he could, but he never asked anything in return. Could he have done something for someone who was now repaying him? After the pastor left, Sarah lay awake in the hammock, swaying slowly as she thought. A debt. Could it be possible? But with whom? And why not show themselves? The answer came a few days later, but not in the way she expected. Sarah had left very early to deliver an order to Mrs. Baker's house on the other side of the community. When she returned around 9 in the morning, Emily was sitting at the door with a strange expression. "Mum, a basket came today, but it's different." "What do you mean, different?" "Come see." Sarah went in and saw the basket on the table. Besides the usual bread and milk, there was a note, a piece of brown paper with words written in shaky but legible handwriting. She picked up the paper with trembling hands and read, "It's not charity, it's a debt." Sarah felt her legs weaken. She sat in the chair, rereading the words several times. A debt. But a debt for what? From whom? "What does it say, Mom?" Emily asked anxiously. "It says—" "It's a debt," Sarah murmured. "A debt? Someone owes us?" "I don't know, dear. I don't know." At that moment, something inside Sarah shifted. The anger and pride gave way to deep confusion and a painful curiosity. Who could owe her or Michael a debt? And what kind of debt would be paid with bread and milk every morning? Sarah tucked the note into her dress pocket and spent the day trying to work, but her mind couldn't focus. The sewing machine squealed several times because she forgot to thread it or adjust the tension properly. At night, after the girls had fallen asleep, she took the note again and studied it by the lamplight. The handwriting was that of an elderly person, she was sure of that. The words trembled slightly, as if written by hands that no longer had the steadiness of youth. In the following days, Sarah began to investigate discreetly. She visited Mr. Wilson's general store, where the older men usually gathered to talk. "Mr. Wilson, may I ask you a question?" she said, while waiting for him to wrap the little sugar she had money to buy. "Of course, Sarah. Do you know anyone around here that my husband Michael helped in the past? Someone who might have received a favor from him?" Mr. Wilson scratched his head, thoughtful. "Well, Michael was a very good man. He helped everyone he could. There are many people around here who received help from him at some point. But anyone in particular? Something more significant?" "Well, there was that time he helped Mrs. Garcia's son when the boy got sick. He paid for part of the medicine. And there's Bike Joe, who he helped fix the fence after the storm 2 years ago. Oh, and old friend Frank's family when they were going through hard times." Sarah heard the list grow. Michael had helped many more people than she had imagined, and most of these acts of help he had never told her about. "He never asked for anything in return?" she asked. "Ask Michael." Mr. Wilson laughed. That man didn't have the heart to ask anything from anyone. He gave because he wanted to help, not because he expected to receive. "And is there anyone from his family in the area? Parents, uncles, grandparents?" The store owner made a thoughtful expression. "His family? Well, I know he didn't have much contact with his father. There was a falling out years ago, even before you got married. But I don't really know the story." Sarah felt a tightness in her chest. Michael's father. She knew very little about him. Michael never talked about the subject, and the few times she asked, he quickly changed the conversation. All she knew was that there was an old misunderstanding and that the father hadn't attended their wedding. This father of his, is he still alive? "I can't tell you, Sarah. It's been a long time since I've heard of him. But if he is, he must be quite old by now. Michael himself would be in his early 40s if he were here, so his father must be in his 70s. Sarah thanked him and left the store with more questions than answers. She passed by Mrs. Garcia's house, who confirmed that Michael had helped her son years ago. He was an angel, Sarah. My boy was burning with fever, and I had no money for the medicine. Michael showed up and paid for everything. He said we could pay when we could, but he never asked for it. Never. The woman had tears in her eyes as she remembered. When I heard that he had passed, I cried for days. Did you ever pay anything? I tried. A couple of times I brought some money to your house, but you weren't there and he refused. Said it wasn't necessary. Sarah continued her investigation over the following days. She spoke with Bike Joe, with Frank's family, with others Michael had helped. Everyone told similar stories. Michael giving, helping, working for others without expecting anything in return. And he hid this from her. Why? Why didn't he tell her? One afternoon, when she was returning from another one of these conversations, she met Mrs. Thompson again. Sarah, I heard you've been asking about your late husband around. I'm trying to understand some things. Well, if you want my opinion, I think you should let the past rest. Michael is gone, and digging up old things won't bring him back. I'm not trying to bring him back, I just want to understand. Understand what? Sarah hesitated, but decided to ask anyway. Did you know Michael's father? Mrs. Thompson made a strange face. Old William? Yes, I knew him. But it's been years since I've seen him. I don't even know if he's still alive. William? Sarah repeated the name. Michael had never mentioned his father's name to her. Yes, William Johnson. A difficult man, they said. Very poor, very proud. He had a nasty disagreement with Michael when you got married. I don't know the details, but I know it created a horrible atmosphere in the family. What kind of disagreement? Look, I don't really know, but I heard it had to do with you. Something about him not approving of the marriage. But these are old rumors, Sarah. I don't even know if they're true. Sarah felt a weight in her stomach. Not approve of the marriage. Why? She had never known anything about this. Michael had always said that his father simply wasn't present, that they had no contact. He never mentioned rejection or disapproval. Do you know where he lives? William? I have no idea. Like I said, it's been years since I've seen him. He must be very old by now, if he's even still alive. But why so much interest in him? Just curiosity. Sarah lied. That night she could barely sleep. William Johnson, Michael's father. A man she had never met, never seen. A man who, according to Mrs. Thompson, didn't approve of their marriage. But why? What was wrong with her? And more importantly, was he the one responsible for the baskets? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The days went by, and Sarah was torn between continuing to investigate and trying to simply accept the situation. The baskets kept arriving religiously every morning. But now, instead of anger, she felt a mix of confusion, hurt, and a painful curiosity. If it really was William, Michael's father, why was he doing this? Why didn't he show himself? And why now, after so long? Then something happened that changed everything. A heavy storm hit the region on a Thursday night. The wind howled so loudly it seemed it would tear the roof off the house. The rain fell in thick curtains, turning the dry ground into mud. The girls were terrified, all huddling in bed while Sarah tried to plug the holes in the roof with cloths to keep the water from coming in. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of relentless rain, strong wind and thunder that made the whole house shake. And during those 3 days, no basket arrived. On the first day without the basket, Sarah thought maybe the person hadn't been able to go out because of the storm. She still had some bread saved and a little milk. She gave it to the girls for breakfast, dividing it into small portions. On the second day, the food began to run out. Sarah looked in the cupboard and saw that only a little cornmeal and half a cup of beans remained. The storm was still too strong to leave the house. On the third day, the situation became critical. The girls were truly hungry. Lily cried, asking for food. Olivia looked at her mother with heartbreaking eyes. Abigail tried to be strong, but her stomach growled loudly. Emily was pale and too quiet. "Mom, I can handle it. Give it to the little ones," Emily said when Sarah divided the last stale piece of bread into 4 tiny parts. "You need to eat too, daughter." "I'm okay." But Sarah could see that she wasn't. None of them were. And she herself felt dizzy with hunger. When the storm finally passed on the 4th day, Sarah had to swallow her pride and do something she never imagined she would need to do: ask for help. She threw a shawl over her shoulders and went to Mrs. Thompson's house, 3 houses down. The path was full of mud and puddles. Her bare feet sank with every step. When she reached the door and knocked, she felt tears burning in her eyes. Mrs. Thompson opened the door, and her eyes widened when she saw Sarah. "My God, woman, you're soaked. Come in." "Mrs. Thompson, I need—" Sarah couldn't finish. The words got stuck in her throat. "Need what? Is everything all right?" "My daughters. They haven't eaten in almost 2 days. The storm. I had nothing saved and couldn't go out to work. I wanted to know if you could lend me some food. Anything. I'll pay you back as soon as I can do some sewing." The humiliation Sarah felt at that moment was worse than any physical pain. There she was, a grown woman, a widow, mother of 4 daughters, having to beg for food so the children wouldn't go hungry. Mrs. Thompson didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at her with an expression Sarah couldn't decipher. Then she went into the house and came back with a cloth bag. "There's bread, some cheese, dried meat, and cornmeal. It's not much, but it should last a few days." "Thank you so much. I promise I'll pay as soon as—" "No need to pay, Sarah. We're neighbors," Mrs. Thompson said, but there was something in her tone that made Sarah feel even worse. Sarah returned home with the bag of food, feeling every step like a defeat. The girls ate voraciously, and she could barely swallow anything. The taste of humiliation was stronger than hunger. That night, alone in the hammock while her daughters slept, Sarah cried silently for the first time since Michael had left. She cried for her situation, for the shame she felt for having to ask for help, for not being able to give the girls a better life. And she cried because, for the first time, she wished the mysterious basket would return. The next morning, when she opened the door, the basket was there. But it wasn't a normal basket. It was twice the usual size, full of bread, milk, cheese, dried fruits, dried meat, and even some sweets for the girls. And there was another note. Sarah picked up the paper with trembling hands and read, "Forgive my delay, I was sick. I couldn't come. Forgive me for letting you go through need." She sat right there on the floor, holding the note to her chest. The benefactor had been sick. That's why he hadn't been able to bring the baskets, and now he was apologizing, as if the fault were his, when in reality it was she who had been too proud to accept help when she had it. "Mom?" Emily appeared at the door, her eyes still swollen with sleep. "Did the basket come back?" "It came back, daughter, it came back." Emily saw the tears on her mother's face and approached, hugging her tightly. "Don't cry, Mom. Everything's all right now." But Sarah didn't know if everything was all right. In fact, she knew nothing was all right. Her life was a mess. Her daughters lived on the edge of poverty. She depended on the anonymous charity of a stranger, and she had no pride left to offer resistance. That day, something changed inside Sarah. The need to discover who the benefactor was stopped being about pride or anger. It became about gratitude and, strangely, about concern. He had been sick. An elderly man, according to what Emily had seen. Sick enough not to be able to leave the house for 3 days during a storm. And yet, as soon as he got better, he started bringing the baskets again. Who would do that? Who cared so much about her and the girls? Sarah spent the following days observing. She got up very early before sunrise and hid behind the window. But exhaustion always won. Her days were long, working on sewing from early morning until late at night, and her body simply couldn't stay awake during the coldest hours of the early morning. Until one Friday, almost a month after the basket started appearing, she finally managed it. Sarah had slept earlier than usual, around 8 at night. She woke up naturally around 4 in the morning, still in complete darkness. She got up slowly, trying not to make noise, and positioned herself behind the front window, hidden by the old chintz curtain. The world outside was plunged into the deep silence of the early morning. The stars still shone brightly in the moonless sky. The temperature had dropped, and Sarah was shivering a little, but she remained firm at her post. An hour passed. 2 hours. Sarah began to doubt she could hold on. Her eyelids were heavy, and she struggled to keep her eyes open. Then, in the first faint light of dawn, she saw it. A figure was slowly approaching along the trail leading to the house. Even at a distance and with little light, Sarah could see it was an elderly man. He walked hunched over, clearly with difficulty, carrying something in his hands. Sarah's heart raced. It was him. Finally, it was him. She stood still, watching as the man drew closer. Gradually, with the growing light of dawn, she could make out more details. He wore simple clothes, a worn brown coat, patched pants. He had a long, completely white beard that covered almost his entire face. His hair was equally white, long, falling over his shoulders. He moved with clear difficulty, stopping every few steps as if needing to gather strength to continue. In his hands he held the familiar wicker basket. Sarah watched as he approached the house. Each step seemed to cost that man an enormous effort. And yet, he kept going, determined to complete his mission. When he finally reached the door, he set the basket down carefully, almost reverently. Sarah saw his hands trembling. He stood there for a moment, just looking at the door, as if seeing something beyond the old wood. Then, he turned to leave. And it was at that moment that Sarah saw his face fully. Even at a distance, even covered by that thick beard, she recognized features that were painfully familiar. The shape of the nose, the way the eyes slanted slightly downward at the corners, the line of the jaw that she had seen thousands of times on another face. Michael's face. The shock was so great that Sarah let out a muffled scream, and her hands flew to her mouth. It was impossible. But at the same time it was unmistakable. That man had the same facial structure as her late husband, and if he did, it could only mean one thing. It was William, Michael's father, her father-in-law, whom she had never met. Memories came in painful fragments. Mrs. Thompson saying he hadn't approved of the marriage. Michael changing the subject whenever she asked about his father. The complete absence of any family contact from his side during the years they were together. And now there he was, old and sick, bringing food for her and the granddaughters he had probably never held in his arms. Sarah felt her legs weaken. She held onto the window frame, trying to process what she was seeing. Should she go out? Should she call him? Confront him? But before she could decide, something inside her broke. All the emotions of the past weeks came to the surface at once. The anger, the shame, the confusion, the pain, the gratitude, everything mixed into a wave that washed over her with devastating force. Sarah ran to the door and opened it so hard that it slammed against the wall with a bang. "William!" she shouted. The elderly man stopped walking. His whole body stiffened. But he didn't turn around. Sarah ran out, barefoot, still in her nightgown. The distance between them seemed enormous and tiny at the same time. When she got within a few steps of him, she stopped, panting, trembling from head to toe. "William Johnson," she repeated, her voice louder than she intended. Slowly, very slowly, the old man turned. And when his eyes met Sarah's, she saw tears streaming down his wrinkled face. They were the same eyes as Michael's, light brown, almost golden when the light hit them just right. The same eyes she had loved for so many years. "Sarah," he said, and his voice was hoarse, broken by emotion and age. Why?" she interrupted, her own tears beginning to fall. "Why are you doing this?" "I had to do it. I promised." "Promised? Promised to whom?" "To myself." William lowered his eyes, unable to hold her gaze. "When I found out that Michael had passed, I knew you and the girls would need help. I couldn't be present in my son's life, but I wasn't going to abandon you, too." "Couldn't be present." Sarah felt the anger starting to rise. "You chose not to be present. Michael never spoke of you, never. I didn't even know you really existed until a few weeks ago." William winced in pain. I know. I know. And that's my fault. Everything is my fault. Your fault for what? What happened? Why did you abandon your son? I didn't abandon him. I was the one who was rejected. Sarah stopped, confused. Rejected? What are you talking about? William took a deep breath as if preparing to tell something very painful. When Michael said he was going to marry you, I didn't approve. Why? What was wrong with me? Nothing. There was nothing wrong with you, he hurried to say. The problem was me. I was always very poor, Sarah. Very poor and very proud. I lived in a mud brick shack out in the desert with nothing to offer. And you were Mr. Anderson's daughter, a respected man who had his own general store, his own house. I thought you were too good for my son. Sarah felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. What? I told Michael that he shouldn't marry you, that he would make you suffer, that he wouldn't be able to give you the life you deserved. We argued. It was an ugly argument, and in the end he told me that if I didn't approve, then I should disappear from his life. And I left. I walked out and never came back. But why didn't you try to reconcile later? Why didn't you try to meet your granddaughters? Pride, William said simply. The damn pride that has always been my ruin. I thought he was the one who had to seek me out first, that he was the one who had to apologize. But he never did, and I was too proud to be the first to give in. And when he passed, William's voice broke completely. When I found out he had passed, it was as if my world collapsed. My only son, and I had lost him without ever making peace with him, without ever saying I was wrong, that he was right to follow his heart, that you were perfect for him and that I had been a foolish, proud old man. Sarah felt the tears flow faster. The pain in that man's voice was real, deep, devastating. I swore that day, William continued, now looking directly at her. I swore I would take care of you, of the wife my son loved and the daughters he left behind, even if from afar, even if you never knew. I would do what I could to make sure you never went without. But you need help too. You're sick, you're old. How do you manage to bring these baskets? Work. I do odd jobs here and there. I carry water, help with the harvest, anything they pay me with food or a few coins. And I use it all to buy what you need. I make the bread myself, I learned many years ago, and the milk I buy from a lady who has goats on the other side of the region. You walk from where? From where I live, about 5 miles from here. 5 miles? Sarah's eyes widened. Every day? Every day, he confirmed. I leave at dawn, bring the basket, go back. Sometimes I get home when the sun is already high. Sarah looked at that old man, broken by age and effort, and felt something inside her break. He walked 8 kilometers every morning, sick, old, tired, just to bring food for her and the granddaughters he had never met, all because of a promise he made to himself after losing his son to pride. Why didn't you introduce yourself? She asked, her voice choked. Why didn't you knock on the door and say who you were? Because I thought you would hate me, that you would blame me for being absent in Michael's life, that you would send me away, and I couldn't bear that. I preferred to help from afar than risk being rejected again. Sarah didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to yell at him, blame him for all the lost years, for all the suffering Michael had because his father wasn't present. But another part saw only an old and remorseful man who was doing everything he could to fix his mistakes. The girls, Sarah finally said, your granddaughters, they don't know you exist. I know. They deserve to know their grandfather. William raised his eyes, surprised and hopeful. You would allow it? Allow it? Sarah felt new tears. William, you've been walking 8 kilometers every day to feed us. You work and sacrifice for us. You are the most foolish and most generous person I've ever known. Of course I'll let you meet. The old man began to cry openly now without trying to hide. His frail body shook with sobs. But there's one condition, Sarah said, moving closer. No more baskets on the doorstep. No more coming secretly at dawn. You will come through the front door. You will meet your granddaughters. You will eat with us. You will be part of the family, as it should have been from the start. I don't deserve... no one is talking about deserving. We're talking about family, about blood, about forgiveness. Sarah extended her hand. Are you ready to meet Emily, Abigail, Olivia, and Lily? William looked at the outstretched hand as if it were the greatest gift he had ever received. Then, with trembling fingers, he took Sarah's hand. I am, he whispered. Sarah led him to the house. When they reached the door, she stopped and looked at him. They will have questions, lots of questions. I know, and I will answer all of them, honestly. Even the ones that hurt, especially the ones that hurt. Sarah nodded and opened the door. Inside, the girls were already awake, probably having heard the shouts outside. All four of them were standing in the middle of the room, eyes wide, looking at their mother and the elderly stranger she was leading by the hand. Girls, Sarah said, her voice firm despite the tears. There's someone very important I want you to meet. Who is he, Mom? Emily asked, suspicious. Sarah looked at William, who was trembling all over, tears streaming freely down his white beard. Then she looked back at her daughters. This is William Johnson, your father's father. She paused, letting the information sink in. Your grandfather. The silence that followed was absolute. The girls looked at the old man with a mixture of shock, confusion, and curiosity. Lily, the youngest, was the first to react. Grandpa, she said, testing the word. Like Grandma Garcia? Yes, sweetheart. Like Grandma Garcia. But this is your grandfather from your father's side. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. But Daddy never talked about a grandfather, Abigail said, still processing. I know, my dear. It's a complicated story. But now he is here, and he wants to meet you. Olivia, always the boldest, took a step forward. Were you the one bringing the food? William nodded, unable to speak. Why? Because... He cleared his throat, trying to control his emotion. Because you are my granddaughters, and I wanted to take care of you. Lily let go of Abigail's hand and walked up to William. The old man bent down with difficulty, coming to her level. The little girl studied him for a long moment, her big, curious eyes examining every detail of his wrinkled face and white beard. You're old, she finally said with the brutal honesty of small children. William let out a laugh, wet with tears. Yes, I am, little one. Very old. And your beard is big. Can I touch it? You may. Lily reached out her small hand and touched the white beard, marveling. It's soft, she turned to her sisters. Come see. It's soft. And so, with the simplicity that only children possess, the barrier was broken. Olivia and Abigail approached too, touching the beard, asking questions, laughing when William made funny faces. Emily, the oldest, stayed further back, still processing everything. But Sarah saw the glimmer of tears in her daughter's eyes. Come in, Sarah said. Let's have breakfast together and talk. We have many years to make up for. That morning, as the sun rose fully and bathed the small house in golden light, the family that had been broken by pride and time began to come together again. William told his story to the girls, not hiding his mistakes, explaining the misunderstanding with Michael, the regret he carried. The girls listened attentively, asking questions, trying to understand. And gradually, they accepted that kind old man as part of the family. In the days that followed, William began to visit regularly, no longer hidden in the shadows of dawn, but in the light of day, coming through the front door. Sarah insisted that he stay for lunch whenever he visited, and even when he protested, saying he didn't want to be a burden, she silenced him with a firm look. You walked 5 miles every dawn to feed us, she said once. Now let me repay you with at least a decent meal. William began to teach the girls things. He showed Emily how to make wicker baskets, a skill he had learned in his youth. He taught Abigail to recognize medicinal plants in the brush. He played with Olivia, making little animals out of twigs. and Lily simply loved sitting on his lap and hearing stories about the father she never knew. "Your father was brave," William would tell. His voice always choked when he spoke of his son. "When he was your age, Lily, he saw a dog stuck in a hole and went down there to save it, even though he was afraid of the dark." "And did he love you?" Lily asked once, with the terrible innocence of children. William was silent for a long moment. "He did love me, yes, and I loved him too. We just didn't know how to show it the right way. But he knew. Deep down, he knew." Sarah watched these interactions from afar, sewing as she listened. There was something deeply moving about seeing that old man finally getting the chance to be a grandfather, to share his love and knowledge with the granddaughters he had never known. But not everything was easy. Emily, the oldest, still kept some distance. One afternoon when William had left, she sought out her mother. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, daughter." "Aren't you angry with him for abandoning Dad?" Sarah stopped sewing and looked at her daughter. "Am I? I don't know. I think I have been. But now I just see an old man who made a mistake and is trying to fix it. We can't change the past, Emily. We can only try to do better in the present. But because of him, Dad grew up without a father, just like us. I know, and that's sad, very sad. But your grandfather also grew up without his son after they fought. He suffered too, and he's still suffering with that regret today." Emily was quiet for a moment. "Do you think Dad would have forgiven him?" "I think so. Your father had a big heart, much bigger than mine. He forgave everyone." "Then I'll forgive him too," Emily said finally. "But it will take a while. Is that okay?" "It's okay, my daughter. Everyone has their own time." The weeks turned into months. William became a constant presence in the family's life. He started helping Sarah with small things around the house that she couldn't do alone. He fixed the leaking roof, reinforced the backyard fence, built a new shelf on the wall. And always, he brought his baskets of bread and milk, even though Sarah insisted it was no longer necessary. "It's my way of helping," he said simply. One day, Emily approached William while he was fixing a broken chair in the backyard. "Can I sit here?" she asked, pointing to another chair. "Of course." They sat in silence for a few minutes, only the sound of sanding wood filling the air. "Do you regret it?" Emily finally asked. "Fighting with my dad?" William stopped sanding. "Every day, every minute of every day. Why didn't you try to talk to him before it was too late?" "Pride, fear, shame." William answered honestly. "I thought he had to reach out first." And the more time passed, the harder it became to take the first step, until it reached a point where it seemed impossible. And now I've learned that nothing is impossible if you have courage, and that pride is the most foolish thing in the world. He looked at Emily. "Don't let pride steal the people you love, girl. Don't make the same mistake I did." Emily nodded slowly. "I forgive you," she said suddenly. "For what you did to my dad. I forgive you." William dropped the sandpaper and covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. Emily stood up and hugged her grandfather for the first time, and he held her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Over time, William's presence brought changes beyond the emotional ones. He introduced Sarah to other families in the area who needed sewing, expanding her clientele. He taught the girls to plant a small vegetable garden, which helped supplement their meals. And his own health, once precarious, seemed to improve with the renewed purpose of being present for the family. But not everything was roses. The community, as always, had its opinions. "So it's true that old William is back?" Mrs. Thompson commented one afternoon when she came to pick up a dress. "Is he living with you now?" "He visits. He doesn't live here," Sarah answered without looking up from her sewing. "But people are talking, Sarah. An old man alone visiting a young widow every day." "People will always talk, Mrs. Thompson," Sarah interrupted, now looking directly at her. "He is my daughter's grandfather, my late husband's father. If that's a problem for anyone, that's their problem, not mine. I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm just warning you that some people are commenting. Let them comment. Sarah's firmness in defending William was something new. It was no longer about reluctantly accepting help or swallowing pride. It was about fully embracing the family she had found, regardless of what others thought. One afternoon, when William was playing with the girls in the backyard, Sarah called him aside to talk. "William, I need to tell you something." "Go ahead. You've been doing much better, stronger, but you're still walking 8 kilometers every day. That can't continue. You're not young anymore, and that effort will harm you. But I can't just stop coming. You are my family." "I know. And that's exactly why I was thinking." Sarah hesitated. "Why don't you come live here?" William's eyes widened. "Live here?" "The house is small, but there's a little room in the back that we use for storage. We can clean it up, put in a bed. It would be your room. That way you don't have to go back and forth every day, and the girls can have their grandfather around all the time." "Sarah, I can't. That would be too much. I don't want to be a burden." "Burden?" Sarah laughed without humor. "William, you carried baskets of food for 5 miles every morning for months. You fixed our house, planted our garden, brought joy to my daughters. The only burden here is you thinking you're a burden." "But what will people think?" "Let people think whatever they want. You're my daughter's grandfather. You have every right to live with your family." William fell silent for a long moment, clearly moved. It would be an honor," he said finally. And so William Johnson moved into Sarah's house with his granddaughters. The small back room was cleaned and arranged. William didn't have much to bring, just some personal belongings, his work tools, and an old chest with some clothes. His presence in the house changed the dynamics completely. The mornings became more cheerful, with Grandpa already awake making bread, while Sarah prepared the coffee. The evenings were filled with stories, William telling about the past, about Michael as a child, about the old times in the region. "Your father loved fishing," he told Olivia, who hung on every word. "We spent hours at the reservoir, just the two of us, waiting for the fish to bite." "Can you teach me how to fish?" Olivia asked, excited. "Yes, I can. Tomorrow we'll go to the reservoir." And they went. William took the girls to explore the region, showing places Michael used to frequent, keeping the memory of his son alive through stories and places. One day, about 6 months after William had moved into the house, Emily came home from school with a proposal. "Mum, the teacher is organizing a party at school. Each student can bring a family member to talk about their profession. Can I bring Grandpa?" "Of course you can, but what will he talk about? About making baskets?" "About being a grandfather," Emily said simply. "About it never being too late to fix mistakes." Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears. "I think that would be perfect." On the night of the party, William was as nervous as Sarah had ever seen him. He had asked her to cut his hair and shave his beard to look more presentable, but she convinced him to just trim it, keeping his distinctive features. "You're perfect just the way you are," she said while trimming the ends of his white beard. "What if I say something wrong? If the children laugh at me?" "They won't laugh. They'll learn. And Emily is so proud to bring you, don't you see?" Indeed, Emily was radiant. She had helped her grandfather choose the least patched shirt, had promised to stay by his side the whole time. At school, when it was William's turn to speak, he stood in front of Emily's class, clearly uncomfortable with all the attention. But when he started speaking, his voice became firm. "My name is William Johnson, and I'm Emily's grandfather. But I wasn't always," he began, taking everyone by surprise. "I was a proud and foolish man who let pride destroy my relationship with my son. For many years I was nobody's grandfather because I had distanced myself from my own family for foolish reasons. The children listened in absolute silence. But after my son was gone, I realized my mistake, and I realized I still had a chance to do things differently, to be the grandfather my granddaughters deserved. It was hard. I had to swallow my pride, admit my mistakes, ask for forgiveness. But it was worth every difficult moment because now I have what's most precious in the world, family." "And what's your advice for us?" the teacher asked, moved. "Never let pride steal the people you love. Apologize when you're wrong, forgive when you're hurt. Because family is the most important thing there is, and there's no clock that can bring back lost time." When he finished, there was silence. Then one child started clapping, then another. Soon the whole class was applauding, and many teachers had tears in their eyes. Emily stood up and hugged her grandfather, whispering, "I love you, Grandpa." It was the first time she had said that, and William had to sit down because his legs could no longer hold him. He pulled his granddaughter into a tight hug, crying openly, without shame. That night marked a definite turning point. William's speech spread through the community, and people began to see him in a new light, no longer as the old man who had abandoned his son, but as the man who had the courage to admit his mistakes and try to fix them. Mrs. Thompson, who always had something to say about everything, went to Sarah's house a few days later. "Sarah, I came to apologize," she said, completely surprising Sarah. "Apologize? For what?" "For judging, for spreading comments. After what I heard about your father-in-law at the school party, I realized I was wrong. That man has a heart of gold, and you did very well to welcome him." Sarah nodded, moved. "Thank you for saying that, Mrs. Thompson." The months kept passing. The house that was once marked by absence and suffering was now full of life. The girls' laughter echoed through the backyard. The smell of William's bread woke everyone in the morning. Sarah's sewing machine hummed its steady rhythm, now with more orders than ever. One afternoon, while organizing old papers, Sarah found her and Michael's marriage certificate. She looked at the date, at the names written in careful handwriting. She felt the familiar pain of loss, but now mixed with gratitude. "Michael," she whispered to the paper as if he could hear. "Your father is here. He's taking care of us. And I think you would be happy." "He would be." William's voice came from the door. Sarah hadn't heard him approach. "Michael had too big a heart to hold grudges. He would have forgiven me, I'm sure of it." "How do you know?" "Because he was my son, and I know I raised him to be better than me, braver, more generous, more capable of forgiving." William approached. "And he chose you, a strong, determined woman who doesn't bend easily, who fights tooth and nail for her family. He chose well." "I was the lucky one," Sarah replied. "No, I was the lucky one, that you gave me a second chance, that you forgave me when I didn't deserve it, that you let me be part of this family." Sarah took her father-in-law's wrinkled hand. "You were always part of this family, William. It just took a while to find your way back." That night during dinner, Lily looked around the table where everyone was gathered eating the stew Sarah had prepared and said, "I like it here. I like when we're all together." "Me too, my daughter," Sarah replied, looking at each face around the table. Emily, serious but smiling. Abigail, talkative as always. Olivia, messy with food. Lily, swinging her little legs on the chair. And William, with his white beard and gentle eyes, finally home. 2 years passed. Life in the small house continued its rhythm. William now had his own clientele, making wicker baskets that he sold at the town market. Emily was turning into a young woman, helping more with the sewing. Abigail discovered a talent for cooking and loved inventing new recipes. Olivia started raising chickens in the backyard, and Lily continued to be the light of the house with her contagious joy. The garden had expanded, now producing enough to feed the family and even sell a little. The house had received a new roof, the result of the joint work of William and some neighbors who offered to help. The sewing machine had been replaced with a newer one, bought with the savings Sarah finally managed to set aside, but the most important thing was invisible. It was love that filled every corner of that house, the forgiveness that had healed old wounds, the family that had rebuilt itself from the ashes of pride and regret. One morning Sarah woke up and saw there was no basket at the door. Her heart tightened for a moment, but then she heard William's voice in the yard, teaching Abigail how to weave willow. She no longer needed baskets on the doorstep. The man who brought them was now inside the house, part of the routine, the laughter, the tears, everything. Sarah went out into the yard and watched the scene. William, now almost 80, still strong thanks to the family's care. Abigail focused on learning the technique, the morning sun bathing everything in golden light. The smell of fresh bread coming from the kitchen where Emily was baking the day's batch. "Good morning," Sarah said. "Good morning, Mum," Abigail replied cheerfully. "Grandpa is teaching me how to make an egg basket. I'm going to make one for each chicken." "That will be a lot of work," William said with a smile. "But I can do it. You teach well." Sarah approached and kissed her father-in-law's forehead. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up. For continuing to walk 8 kilometers every morning even when you were sick, tired, hopeless. For having the courage to take the first step to get closer. For teaching me that it's never too late to fix mistakes." William held her hand. "Thank you. For opening the door. For letting a foolish old man be part of the lives of the granddaughters he never should have stopped knowing." At that moment, with the sun rising and the girls running through the yard, Sarah realized that this was the true wealth. Not the money, not the house, not the material things, but those people. That love. That family that had been broken and was glued back together, stronger in the places where it cracked. And all because one day, a proud widow had the courage to confront the old man who left baskets at her door, and because that old man had the courage to stop when he was called, instead of continuing to run away. Sometimes, Sarah thought, life's greatest gifts come wrapped in pride, pain, and regret, and only when we have the courage to unwrap them, to look inside, to accept, do we discover the treasure that was hidden there all along. End of story. And you, what did you think of this story? Where are you listening from? Do you think Sarah made the right decision to forgive William and welcome him into the family? Is pride really the greatest enemy of happiness? Leave your honest opinion in the comments. We love to know what you think. Thank you very much for following along. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories like this one.